In this video, we're going to be using Aspire, or you could do this in VCarvePro as well, to go through the process of designing the parts for a basic microwave type shelf cabinet. We'll go through the process of drawing them, nesting them, showing how to toolpath. Then in another video, we will demonstrate how we could then use those parts to incorporate each part into a Cabinet Parts Pro nest or job that has other cabinet parts included with it. So our first step is to come into Aspire or VCarvePro. We've set up a new job. The job is 9648 3/4 inch material going to the lower left. And for cabinet making, it is always best to do the machine bed rather than top of material surface, mainly because of material thickness variation and where the Z is going to get zeroed. So I've set the option to be the machine bed. Now for creating all the parts for this particular cabinet, we need two sides, a left or right, a bottom, and a back. The total width of this shelf is 30 inches wide. The total depth is 18, and that is from the front of the shelf here to the back. These side parts are 12 inches high and 16 inches deep. That leaves the 2-inch sticking out on the front. So knowing what our sizes we need, I'm going to start with a rectangle that is going to end up becoming the sides. So sketching out a rectangle, clicking the rectangle, and I'm going to set the X dimension to be 16 with the Y direction being 12, selecting apply, then close. I'm not worried about the placement of this part yet. We're just drawing the parts. We'll later nest them. Now using the line tool, I'm going to hover over top of the midpoint, and it's going to get the midpoint snap. And again, using a midpoint on the opposite line here, and right-clicking to end that line tool. We'll now use the scissors to trim away the bits that we don't need. Using the scissors, hovering over top, scissors open, then close, and there we go. The other thing that we have is a radius along the top here and one more along the bottom. We'll use the fillet tool for this. It's right here. This radius dimension we're going to set to be 10 inches. And once that value is set, hovering your mouse over top of the intersecting points, you get the little check and click OK. I'm going to do the same thing here, but I'm going to change the radius down to 5 inches on the lower part. And there we have one side. Just going to select that and shift that off to the side. Holding the control key down, I'm going to drag it again. That is going to make a duplicate part. Our next process that we need to make is the bottom. So again, starting off with a draw rectangle, drawing it out. If the total width of this cabinet is going to be 30 inches, the inside dimension using 3/4 inch material is going to be 28.5. So that is going to be the width, along with the depth of 18. Selecting apply. Now we have the bottom sized. Just want to put a 1.5 inch radius on the outside corners. So again, using the fillet tool, setting the radius to be 1.5, and clicking on the two corners. Once that is complete, we're going to shift and move that off the side. The final part that we need is the back. So again, I'm going to draw a rectangle. The total width in the X direction is going to be 28.5, and the height is going to be 11.25 inches. Selecting apply, then close. We now have the 4 parts that we need to cut that is going to produce and make this cabinet shelf. So selecting that image, and I'm just going to remove it. To help with the tool pathing, I want to put all of these objects on a layer. I could have started drawing them on its own layer. Right now we have two layers here, and the layer 1 is the one that has the data on it, because we can see based on this graphic that there is it's not a blank page. I want to put these all off on their own layer, and this is also going to help us in toolpathing them here within Aspire or VCarvePro, and it's also going to be used for the importing into Cabinet Parts Pro to create the toolpathing and include it to the nest there as well. So we're going to go right click, and I'm going to come down here and say move to layer, a new layer, and the layer naming is going to be named cut. And for helping with the depth and understanding how deep these are going to go, I need to have this cut at 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to make up my name a 0, and instead of using 0.75, I'm going to use the underscore, just because layer naming doesn't necessarily like to have the decimal in it. So using the underscore as a decimal, and then going to be 7.5. So that is going to indicate to me that this layer needs to be cut down to a total depth of 0.75. So once that is done, we'll say OK. We can now see that we have our cut 0.75 layer in our layer list. Now that we have all of our geometry on the cut 0_75 layer, we no longer need the bitmap layer or the layer 1. So we're going to get rid of those by right clicking and selecting delete, and I'm going to delete empties. And I'm also going to do the same thing for the layer 1. So we only have the one layer cut 0.75, and that is the one that has all of our geometry and data with it. So now to get these parts laid out, we're going to use the nesting feature. And to be able to nest this, I'm going to select all the parts that we want to have nested, and then clicking the nest button, filling out all the data. So I'm going to be cutting this out with a 3/8 diameter cutter. The clearance between each cut I'm going to leave as a 1/8 of an inch. So this means that each part, after nesting, each part will be separated with a part spacing of 0.5 of an inch. Then the border space around the parts is going to be 1/4 of an inch. That is how close to the edge each part is going to be. I'm going to start the nesting with the lower left, and once we have all of that set, just going to go ahead and hit preview, and that kind of lays it out. The true shape nesting aspect of things kind of shifted and moved that part up into it. The other part, I'm not crazy about the looks of that, not that it wouldn't work, but I'm going to just move that down and put it more in line with this other side, and manually going to move that part to the right by 0.5 inches, and I'm going to do so by using the transform objects, move selected vectors, a relative distance, and going to move that to the right by 0.5 of an inch. So now that we have all of our parts laid out and drawn, we're ready to create the toolpathing. So I'm going to switch to the toolpath side, and I'm not going to select it. I'm going to use our layer name to be able to select all the objects. So to be able to cut these out, I'm going to do a profile toolpath. I'm going to set the total cut depth to be that 0.75 and plus just a little bit more, 0.10 of an inch, 0.76. I have my 3/8 tool already selected. I'm cutting in a single pass on the outside. I do want to add in a ramp distance of 1 inch. That is going to prevent the direct straight down plunge. And I'm going to give it a layer toolpath name of the same name that I used for the layer, just so we could understand and see how the two relate to one another. So once that is done, we need to now select the geometry. And again, I'm going to use the layer name to be able to use the selection tools within the selector. And now just answering a few questions here that I want all closed vectors I want to associate this template or this toolpath with these vectors with the toolpath, or that layer with the toolpath. So what that means is any newly drawn item on the cut 075 layer will automatically be included with this toolpath when we click recalculate. Setting the depth from import, we did not import any vectors, so we don't have any cutting depth associated with it, so we could leave that unchecked. And here we have the selected layers, and that is the cut layer that we want. So we're going to go ahead and close. Notice that we are now selected. Clicking calculate, we get this warning that we're going to cut all the way through, and I'm going to say OK. And there we have our cutting toolpaths needed for the microwave shelf. The next process here would just be selecting and making that visible, clicking Save Toolpaths. Coming up, I like to always have the option Visible Toolpaths to one file, just to make sure that I get any toolpaths associated with this sheet all included in one file. So that is the basic steps on how to create the parts for that microwave shelf. We will have another video that is going to show how to prepare these files and these parts to either import into VCarvePro Aspire to be used again in another project, or to show how we could incorporate these parts into Cabinet Parts Pro with other cabinet parts.